Pat Pattinson is a professional turnaround practitioner specializing in the rehabilitation of distressed businesses with a success rate of more than 95% for all business rescue plans published to date. Pat's commitment to the practice of compliant and ethical turnaround practices is rooted in his passion for saving businesses, saving jobs, and providing the best possible outcome to all affected persons. The restructuring or rehabilitation of a distressed business is one of the toughest things someone can go through, and is often a process filled with more confusion and frustration than is truly necessary. And that's why Pat created this series of turnaround boot camps. The more people know about at least the basics of restructuring or rehabilitating businesses in distress, the more clarity they can bring to the process. This is only one episode in the series of boot camps. Be sure to follow Pat on LinkedIn so you can receive notifications of when registrations open for the next one.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this morning's episode. Slight problem with the mic there. Apologies for that. I would just like to, as per normal, state that the views expressed here are my own, not those of the associations I belong to, nor the colleagues that I work with. They are my personal experiences in business rescues and turnaround practices and processes that I have had in my career as a turnaround practitioner. The topic for today, of course, a very current one, a very problematic one. We only have to look at this morning's papers and papers over the last couple of weeks that talk about the job losses in our post office. It's a substantial impact held on those that have not necessarily been at fault. Staff are those that come to work every day, they do their jobs diligently, and they are the first ones whose jobs are on the line when cost cutting needs to be considered. In saying that, what we're going to go through this morning is vital, not just during business rescue, but before business rescues as well. And in order for me to best convey that message, I would like to share a real life, a true case study with you that I felt applicable and prudent to so many scenarios that I've seen, but the exact opposite as well. So I'm going to tell the case study from what actually happened, and we're then going to go around and just consider what the other side of the coin could have been. A very, very well-known company, Blue Ribbon Sports, was subject to a hostile takeover in 1971. It's an American company. There was not really a startup. They've had some successes, and that successes has worried their competitors so much that there was this hostile takeover where a company, Onitsuka, were going to come and take over in a hostile takeover. Hostile takeover is not that well known in South Africa, but in America, it could be a real problem. Although the company was not necessarily in financial distress, it needed to restructure its affairs in order to fight this potential takeover from the Chinese company. In order to do that, cost-saving mechanisms had to be implemented, which was done by management, done by the directors, and the manner in which these directors and the shareholders contributed and assisted with saving the money and reinvesting into the business motivated their engaged staff to the extent that a lot of the senior management would not cash their checks for a period of 3 months. They would then cash a check and then let it go over again for a couple of months in order for the company to have that little bit of extra cash flow in the banks. This was noticed by staff, and systematically directors and members noted that there were substantial fewer deposits requested from the staff asking for accommodation. When the reps went out, they paid their own accommodation and they did not put in the slips of the reimbursements. They did not ask to be reimbursed for the meals and the fuels on these trips. And remember, this was way before the internet, so your reps still went knocking door to door, boots on the ground. When this was noticed, and the immediate conclusion from directors is that the staff are no longer going out, but they were proved. There's our visit slips, here's our orders. They've simply been paying and carrying this cost by themselves. But it went way beyond that. In some instances, these reps, in order to keep the relationships, would pay for returns out of their own pocket. Returns not necessarily in the form of replacing the actual goods, but paying for the transport of those goods, making sure everything was done. They carry this out of their pocket without any expectation to be reimbursed at a later stage. They did this to save their own jobs. And often in business rescue scenarios where I'm appointed, where the staff become difficult, it is as if they don't realize that if a business rescue is not successful, it's their jobs. On the other side of this, if this did not happen, if the staff did not assist with the turnaround, they were not able to fight off this hostile takeover, the business that we know today as Nike would not have existed. So Blue Ribbon Sports originally is the original company that came and turned its name into Nike, the entity we know today. But it had a real risk in those early days. And it was purely because of the level of the staff engagement that managed to get them on the other side of that hostile takeover. So what is staff engagement? There's normal 5 levels that we're all taught. You are actively engaged, engaged, not engaged, disengaged, or actively disengaged. In reality, there's like 3 of these. They're so close in the explanations and definitions that there are 3 main categories that you can work with. But for the purposes of today, we need to consider these in 3 different forms. Normal business, the staff engagement during normal business, but at the same time, what happens when the company goes into the stress, when they work in that zone of the stress zone, insolvency, whichever you want to call it, what are the importance of your engagement of staff then? And then, of course, during a turnaround process, whether it be informal, whether it be formal, business rescue, whatever you want to call it. This is where the real difference between these levels of engagement comes in. As a very quick example, actively engaged are those staff that are so part of the business. They are such believers in the business that they are the market mavens. They are the evangelists that go out and promote the business to their friends, can't stop talking about it, can't stop talking about the products. Wherever you see them, they promote this business without being asked, without being paid. It is just that they are passionate about the companies and the people that they work with. You get your engaged staff. Now, these are your normal super staff. They come to the work when they're here. They do their absolute best. They go the extra mile. They finish on time. They stay late. They come in early without complaining, without having to be asked. This is your engaged staff. Your not engaged staff is just those people. They're there at 8 o'clock in the morning. They do a day's work. They go home at 5, and they are really there to do their jobs to the best of their abilities within the parameters that they are requested for. They won't necessarily work overtime unless asked. They won't come in early, and they will not necessarily take part in any of the company's functions. Your disengaged staff are, of course, those that purely come to the office to get a salary. They will do as much as they have to do to keep their jobs. They will not go the extra mile. If they can, they'll come in 5 minutes late. They'll leave 5 minutes early. They are really purely there to earn the paycheck. Obviously, they won't do anything to risk the jobs, but they will definitely not go the extra 5 meters. Your actively disengaged staff are the dangerous ones. Those are the ones that come to work with ulterior motives. They will come to the office and they will sit behind the desk using the company resources for whatever purposes, running a sideline, phoning for movie tickets for the kids, try and duck away as quickly as possible. These are the dangerous one. And in turnarounds, these are the ones that normally causes the biggest problems. Starting their own businesses whilst utilizing the company's resources. There are some real horror stories that I can share with you. But on the point of sharing stories, if you come back to the actively disengaged staff, I'd like to share one of my personal stories of a business rescue that I was involved with. As per most of these cases, the directors waited a little bit too long. So when we got to the business, salaries were behind, staff was upset, there was no communication. The fact that the company went into business rescue was a surprise to the staff, which was actually interesting. Were behind, but they did not realize that the company was in financial distress. When asked the question, but how do you put these two and two together? You're in financial distress, you've not been paid, but at the same time, you guys are telling us you did not know. The simple reality is that being paid late was the ordinary course of business. That's what the directors did. They would not pay them on the Friday for whatever reason. On Monday, they get a little bit busy, so they pay them by the Tuesday. The staff was so used to being paid late that it was not a surprise to them. By that time, the staff were all either disengaged or actively disengaged. They were there to do the bare minimum, and it was as a result of how they were treated in the ordinary course of business that has now actually led to the situation where the company became financially distressed. If the staff was treated properly, if they were paid their salaries, if the communications were there, if disciplinary processes was followed, this company would not have been in rescue. But it was purely because of the actions and how the directors treated their staff that put the staff into a position where they felt no need to contribute back to the business. On the other hand, one of the very warm and fuzzy stories that I have been involved with, some time ago, very, very long time ago, actually, about 10 years by now, I was involved in a company that sharpened blades. These are the big industrial blades that you used to cut trees, to cut the timber. And this was in a day where sharpening these blades was still an important part of the industry. Nowadays, sharp blades are either done automatically on the machine or you see a new saw blade. It was very much at the transition period where they were going from having to sharpen these blades to where it became cheaper to simply buy a new blade, where this company was stuck in the middle. They still made profit. They had no financial distress. They were in no real immediate trouble. However, the way that the world works, this company was then forced to join a bargaining council. This was not initiated by the staff. The bargaining council became aware of this company. They visited the site, and the company was then forced to join this particular bargaining council. What came with joining this particular bargaining council was minimum wages. And I understand that everybody needs a minimum wage. That's not the purpose of the story. What happened when these minimum wages was introduced into this particular business? The company knew that once it gave the staff the increases as required by this bargaining council, the contracts that they currently had, they would not be able to fulfill those at a profit. And sometimes when you enter into one of the bigger contracts, it's a 2 or 3 year contract, you've based it on the salaries you were paying. Now with this additional salaries, there was no way that this company could keep its doors open. They attempted to negotiate with the bargaining council. The staff themselves said to the bargaining council, we are not interested. We are happy to earn the salaries that we're earning. It's a good boss. Let us do what we need to do. Please keep our salaries as it is. Unfortunately, the bargaining council approached the court, and the court provided an order that they had to look after the staff. They had to be a member, and as a member, these were the new salaries you would have to pay. The only thing the directors could then do was to let the company work on short time, and staff were asked to only come in 4 days a week. They decided that Thursday would be the last day, giving all the staff off on Friday and then paying them for the 4 days. This was communicated to the staff on a Wednesday. The staff were disappointed, knowing that they're going to lose salaries, but it was not as militant as a lot of these meetings go. Come Friday morning, at about 8:30 in the morning, the director phones me. And surprising to all of us, All of the staff were there, and we tried to explain to them, guys, we can't pay you. This was the agreement. And the shop steward simply came up to us and said, no one asked us to be paid. We are here for the business. That company continued working for a period of about 9 months, where the staff rotated, not necessarily all of the staff all of the time, but they were able to continue operating, completing all of the projects for the next 9 months without paying the staff on a Friday. Obviously, this had a different set of problems, and eventually the company could not continue doing that. But it's just an example as to what level staff go to assist the companies if they are treated correctly. Coincidentally, that was more than 10 years ago. That company has subsequently converted their operations from sharpening, still some specialized equipment, but predominantly sales. So although they don't exist in the format that they were then, they managed to continue trading. Legend, if we then just quickly go through normal business, as we've explained, if you treat your staff well during normal business, they will treat the company well, and the likelihood, even in smaller distress scenarios where the assistance from the staff, and I'm not talking about going out of the way like these examples, but just doing little things, keeping your customers happy, providing the confidence in the business, it can go a long way. Should you then enter the zone of insolvency, the zone of distress, financial distress, again, whatever you want to call it, these staff members, the trust that they have in the business, that will go through to your customers and to your suppliers, and the trust will remain. And they are vitally important during a process of financial distress. The difficulty, of course, comes in when the company goes into a turnaround process. This is where a turnaround practitioner such as myself, the shareholders of the business, the directors of the business, need to do additional communication with the staff. They need to know what's going on. They need to know exactly where they stand. And if it is a scenario where certain staff will be retrenched, if there will be job losses, be open about it, be transparent about it, and make sure that all of the staff know that there will be support. You will help them look for other work. You will do what is necessary to show the respect and appreciation for what they have done for yourself. The opposite side of that, of course, is, as I've alluded to previously, you could have an actively engaged staff that so quickly converts to disengaged where they become detrimental to the business. If you have an actively engaged staff member, he's normally at the top, especially when you go to sales. He's the one with the top sales figures. And the moment that person feels that he's not being treated fair, he's been kept in the dark, he realizes I've been giving my all, but the company is not respecting me and they're not giving me the very basics back. That will be the first person to start looking for another job, and the rest will follow. Even more than that, it's normal engaged staff could look for work, but when he becomes actively disengaged is when he decides that I can do this better. I did all the sales for you, and now I'm going to go on my own. I'm going to run my own business. I'm going to take your customers. I'm going to take your resources, your knowledge, your experience, and I'm going to start my own business. Whether that business is successful or not, whether they realize their mistake and they look for another job, or they come back, or they found out that they're running this business while they're employed and they decide to stop doing it. These are all scenarios that I've experienced. The damage that the staff do, the damage that the company suffers because of this reduced pricing, reputational damage because starting my own business away from my company is normally accompanied with bad-mouthing the company in order to solicit them away from the business. So you need to be transparent with your staff. You need to provide the support and treat them the way that they have been treating you. Just while we've got a couple of minutes left, if we look at your actively engaged staff, the reward there is how they contribute back to the business, the additional work they bring in, the additional advice they give, the extra hours they put in, even if it is at home. Your biggest risk with an actively engaged staff member, this does not mean you can provide him with any preferential treatment. These days, bonuses and those type of things are again governed by your bargaining councils, by agreements, etc. So it's difficult to reward them, but it doesn't have to be money. But your risk there is losing that particular staff member. So at least recognize the additional effort that he put in. The second one, 2 out of the 3, is your engaged staff. This is your staff that comes to work every day. They do their job. They go home. They don't go the extra mile, but they do nothing to harm the company or to damage either. Your reward there is that you know exactly what you get. You're paying exactly for what you get. There's no unknowns. The risk, of course, smack bang in the middle, there is the risk of keeping that staff member. Having a staff member like that in the position and having him perform every day means that he is occupying a space, a seat that could have gone to an actively engaged staff member. It is your duty as a director to try and get that engaged staff to become actively engaged. Let them become your marketing people. Obviously, the other risk is that engaged staff are not the most loyal. If another opportunity presents themselves, even if it is with a minuscule difference in payment, even just a little bit closer to home or flexible time, you stand the risk of losing that reliable staff member. Remember, your engaged staff members are allowed to do the work out there. Ladies and gentlemen, you then have your actively disengaged staff members. Your reward for having these actively disengaged staff members is a simple opportunity to replace them, which is the risk. Actively disengaged staff are very dangerous. They will use your resources. They will print hundreds of copies. They will phone their friends. They will do whatever is in their own best interest. And the risk there is 100% for that staff member to stay within your company, to jeopardize a corporate culture that you may have. It is vital to change that actively disengaged to an engaged staff member and ultimately a market maven for your company. If you are not able to do that, if you do not believe that sufficient training and guidance will actually turn this staff member, you need to keep an eye on him and you need to make sure that he does not do irreparable damage to your company. It is a very high risk staff member to have. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, the Labor Relations Act is there. You cannot just chase people away. You need to assist them. Remember, when it comes to staff, it is corrective, not punitive. You must try and get this staff member to contribute and not be a drain on the company resources. Ladies and gentlemen, then for those that are interested, I have written an ebook on this topic. If you just drop a request in the comment section or you email me or text me directly, I'll be more than happy to email it on to you. And it would be great to hear what you think of the ebook. Slightly on par of what we've discussed this morning, but it goes a little bit deeper into it all. Ladies and gentlemen, then on that note, thank you very much for joining me this morning. We've got one session left before we have a break. And we will then also be doing the in-person boot camp, and I'm hoping to see you guys there. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoy your Friday.